So far away, Lucas. It's the first video of the year. We're in lockdown again. What are we talking about?
We're talking about a very stretchy boy.
Yes, Reed Richards. So far away, Lucas, as you often do, would you like to let the lovely audience at home know what we're talking about in this episode of Wiki Weekends?
Yes, we will be discussing, as you said, Reed Richards, aka Mr. Fantastic.
Yes, and we'll be referring specifically to the Marvel Wiki, a link to which you can find below. And as noted, at the start of this piece is the first video we're recording of 2021. I'm not sure when it's going to go out, but we're once again in lockdown, so get used to this look for me. Anyway, we'll start as we often do at the beginning with the biographical information about Mr. Reed Richards. We have here, real name, Dr. Reed Richards. Yeah, don't you forget it.
Fuck yeah.
Current alias, Mr. Fantastic. What a narcissistic piece of shit. So what does he call his best friend who looks like a monster thing? What does he call himself? Mr. Fantastic. So aliases, so get ready for your band names, folks. Big Brain, Brainbox, Brains, I'm starting to notice a theme here. Dr. Doom, Dr. Fantastic, Dr. Reed Richards, citation needed. I don't think you need citation needed on whether he's called Dr. Reed Richards when he has like 35 doctorates. The Explorer, the Invincible Man, the Man in the Mystery Mask, Mr. Elastic, Mr. F, Mr. Fantastical, Mr. Look at Me, I'm So Fantastic. I like that one. Plastic Man, Professor Richards, Reed Benjamin, the Rubber Man, and Stretch.
It's really upsetting that his best nickname is Dr. Doom.
Yeah, and that's Dr. Doom's name. Affiliation, the Fantastic Four, the founder and leader, formerly the Future Foundation, the 50-state initiative, the Illuminati, of which he is a founding member, the Avengers, the Defenders, the Interdimensional Council of Reeds, which is where all the Reed Richards from multiple realities all meet up and all talk about how they can solve multiversal threats. And I should point out that some of those Reed Richards have infinity gauntlets, but they don't work in other realities. So they're largely seen as being useless. Like, yeah, you're powerful in your reality, but it's not helpful here. The Knights of the Atomic Round Table, which is like my favourite thing that keeps coming up in these videos. And it's the best band name, I'm calling it. And then Headbangers. Occupation, scientist, adventurer, formerly a cosmic being. Formerly. What a CV. Education, so I'm actually curious about this. Reed attended such prestigious universities as the California Institute of Technology, Harvard University, Columbia University, and State University, acquiring multiple scientific doctorates in fields such as engineering, math, and physics. He is claimed to have 18 doctorates.
Of course, yep.
Characteristics, male, height, 6'1", parentheses, variable.
Of course.
But he can stretch. Weight, 180 pounds. Eyes brown, hair brown with white at his temples, which is like such a cliche thing now, but I'm pretty sure like Reed Richards, the character, one of the earliest characters to have that, and it's so fucking cool. And every now and again you'll see that fan mock-up floating around of John Krasinski with that haircut, and you're like, oh, he'd be a good Mr. Fantastic. Unusual features. When asleep, parts of Mr. Fantastic's body relax to the point where they, and I quote, sag. Poor Mrs. Fantastic. Isn't that like the best joke in those bad Fantastic Four movies? Where like, oh, is it true that Mr. Fantastic can stretch any part of his body? And you get Chris Evans, Johnny Storm saying, well, in my experience, Mr. Fantastic tends to be a bit limp. Well, I've always found him to be a little limp. And before we move on to the fun stuff, that is powers and abilities, we'll just have a quote from Reed Richards himself. I learned that the difference between living and dying is managing fear. Not being afraid, so afraid of losing the things that you love and hold them too tight. I used to believe in universal contraction, entropy, and the end of all things. Well, I changed my mind, I'm letting go, because now I believe in expansion. I believe we endure. Don't you see? Everything lives. And how is it that every single time we do a quote from a comic book character, they are more eloquent than the President of the United States when we're recording this? Personality, and you know it's good when the character gets a section on their personality. So, Reed is an intellectual. I think you should have stopped there.
That's
I don't think you need to know it. He's an intellectual, but it says here that he prefers to examine foes and if possible, negotiate with them before actually fighting. He's often intrigued by scientific implications of a problem. So much so, he often forgets there is a problem in the first place. Reed is an extremely likeable fellow who keeps a pleasant smile on his face and cares deeply about those he is close to, particularly his extended family. However, he does occasionally lapse into depression and self-hatred. Man, that's rough.
That is, yeah.
Reed is a humanitarian who will try to prevent any intelligent being from suffering. This can lead him to do controversial things that fly in the face of all apparent logic, such as when he once saved Galactus from dying.
That's a tough one to justify.
Susan once speculated that Reed's eccentric behaviour may be due to autism. Oh, so he could be a comic character on the spectrum. And then we have powers and abilities, and this makes no sense because his intelligence is a 6, and people who don't know, the Marvel power grid is 1 to 7, and 7 is the absolute highest it can be for a Marvel character. And the fact that Reed has a 6 makes no fucking sense to me.
Yeah, I thought he was just known as one of the top tier intelligent beings.
Yeah, I've always acted under the assumption that Reed is like the yardstick by which all other intellects in the Marvel Universe are measured, because, as mentioned, he has like 18
Clearly
doctorates,
not.
and he knows everything. So let's find out, shall we? Powers. Plasticity. Mr. Fantastic possesses the ability to convert the mass of his entire body into a highly malleable state at will. How his body's respiratory and circulatory systems function at these disordered extremes is as of yet unknown, aka comic writers don't want to explain it because they can't be arsed.
Yeah.
Mr. Fantastic can alter his form in a matter of seconds, often much less depending on the complexity of the shape, and revert to his normal humanoid shape within a similar time. The greater the distance he stretches, or the more he extends the size of the object he becomes, the weaker his overall strength becomes. Mr. Fantastic's transformation into a malleable state is reflexive and nearly instantaneous. For example, if he was in his normal form and taken unaware by machine gun fire, which must happen a lot when you're walking around calling yourself Mr. Fantastic, his body would still absorb the bullet's impact through radical deformation. In fact, it was revealed that Mr. Fantastic, despite being in a weakened state, who protected all the heroes other than the Hulk from the impact of a 150 billion ton mountain falling on them, before the Jade Giant, oh my god, that's such a good name for the Hulk.
Yeah,
That's such a good nickname for the Hulk.
that is.
Caught the mountain, and the strain caused it to pass out. So that means, like, even before the Hulk caught it, his body was already reacting to stop it from killing him. Mm-hmm. Mr. Fantastic's skin is virtually impervious to laceration or punctures unless he willfully relaxes his reflexive control of a small area of his body. In that case, scalpels and needles can penetrate his skin, which means he has to actively concentrate so people can perform surgery on him, which means he has to have surgery while he's awake. God, that's a rough time,
It's
innit?
fucking brutal.
Then again, he probably performed surgery on himself. I won't be surprised. Like that Future Armour episode where they make tiny robots and fly inside Fry's body.
Oh, yeah.
I bet Reed Richards does that. So
The thing is, though, he could, like, stretch his head above his body so he can see what he's doing to himself.
pretty much, yeah. Other powers possessed by Mr. Fantastic include dense flesh. Due to the great malleability and the elasticity of his molecular structure, man, I'm glad I've had a coffee this morning because I would not be able to do this otherwise. Mr. Fantastic is able to absorb the impact of any type of man-made ballistic projectile by deforming his body along the path of the projectile's trajectory. So yeah, that's the thing. Like when you shoot him, the bullets just bounce off, basically. I just like the idea that people just randomly shoot at Mr. Fantastic.
While he's not aware.
Just to see what happens. Contain explosions. Mr. Fantastic may use his elastic form to contain explosions by enveloping them and allowing their force to expand him. So, redirect projectiles. After his body absorbs the kinetic energy of a ballistic projectile's impact, Mr. Fantastic can expel the object back along its trajectory by flexing his body like a trampoline. That's going to be rough, on it.
Oh.
So, do you know in like this Spider-Man PS4 when guys shoot rockets at you and you throw them back?
Yeah.
It's like that, but way more insulting because he can do it with his dick. Speaking of which, elongation. Mr. Fantastic can extend his limbs, torso, or neck to great distances. The maximum length he can distend before his body segments become painful is about 1,500 feet.
Jesus.
So you can have a 1,500 foot long penis.
Ladies.
Although he can extend discrete body parts such as, and I quote, a single finger, an ear, or an eye. Grappling. Mr. Fantastic may restrain opponents very efficiently by using his elastic form to entangle them. He can also move at greater speed by stretching his limbs. So he just becomes the ladder man. It's like chilling. That must look terrifying if you saw him and Spider-Man swinging through New York. Shape changing. Mr. Fantastic can stretch, deform, expand, or compress his entire body or parts into any contiguous shape he can imagine for a variety of uses. Imitation. Mr. Fantastic may alter his basic physical features, allowing him to take on the appearance of any other man with a similar hair and skin tone. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I thought he was going to say, yeah, as long as they've got like the same haircut as him, which I'm guessing not a lot of people have, unless like in the Marvel universe, people like Reed Richards' look and copy it. At one time, Mr. Fantastic actually increased his size and mass density, in effect bulking his body to Thing-like proportions while increasing his strength to the same levels.
Fucking hell.
The force of his strikes was enough to stagger even Onslaught, which for people who don't know is one of the most broken OP things ever introduced in comic books, because it is the intellect and powers of Charles Xavier combined with the intellect and powers of Magneto. So it's the power sets of Magneto and Professor X working in tandem, but it doesn't have the restraint of Charles Xavier.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine just what would happen if Charles Xavier was like, no, fuck it, open all 8 gates. And
Yeah, just do it.
for some reason, this like 6 foot tall man who can stretch his dick 1,500 feet was just beating the crap out of this thing. Canopy, parachute, or sheath. Mr. Fantastic can extend his body in 2 directions, creating a parachute. Gliding. Mr. Fantastic can transform himself into aerodynamic shapes, such as a hang glider. That's got to be rough, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Just like how we get into our destination as Mr. Fantastic turns into a hang glider. It's, oh, not again. Cushion. Mr. Fantastic may form his elastic form into a trampoline and other cushion-like objects. Slingshot. Mr. Fantastic may use his elastic form as a slingshot to hurl objects with great force. Geometric shapes. Mr. Fantastic can compress his body into the shape of a solid sphere, cylinder, cube, or toroid, and a rectangular prism. He can assume the shape of any solid he can envision clearly. Fist weapons. Mr. Fantastic may form his fists into large hammers, which improve his physical effectiveness. Bouncing ball. Mr. Fantastic can transform himself into any number of resilient shapes, such as a ball or a spring, that allow him to leap or bounce great distances. Like, this is the smartest man in the world, and he's turning himself into a fucking ball. Oh, he's just doing that Sonic Smash Bros. Tech. 2-dimensionality. Mr. Fantastic can flatten himself to the thickness of an average sheet of paper, or narrow himself to a diameter small enough to pass through the eye of a needle.
Oh my god.
Infiltration. Mr. Fantastic can lower his body's cohesion to such an extent he can flow through minute openings, so he can turn into a liquid. Open locks. Mr. Fantastic may form his fingers into various types of keys, allowing it to open most forms of mechanical lock. Wind generation. Mr. Fantastic can turn his hands into fans. The fuck are you going to do against that man?
I don't know.
And then he beats you up with his dick. Then we have here nigh omnipotence, and this was a power that he had previously when he acted as a vessel to the Molecule Man's unlimited source of power. And together with his son Franklin, who's even more OP, created entire realities. I did not know that Mr. Fantastic was just so fucking baller with his powers. I did not know he could stretch like 1,000 feet.
Yeah, I didn't know that at all.
That's ridiculous. Does that mean he could be 1,000 feet tall if he wanted to be?
Yeah. I still think one of the greatest things I've seen in like a form of media about Mr. Fantastic is the Lego Marvel game where he just turns into a giant teapot and walks around.
That's so good. So we move on from powers and go on to abilities, which include super genius intelligence. Dr. Richards is one of the most intelligent beings on the planet. He possesses a mastery of electronical, mechanical, and aerospace engineering, electronics, chemistry, all levels of physics, and human and alien biology. A visionary theoretician, an inspired machinesmith, he has made breakthroughs in such varied fields as space travel, time travel, extra-dimensional travel, biochemistry, robotics, computers, synthetic polymers, communications, mutations, transportation, holography, energy generation, spectral analysis, and more. He's one of the few people on Earth to be an expert on other dimensions and the method by which to travel through them. Reed patents are so valuable, he's able to bankroll the Fantastic Four Incorporated without any undue financial stress. He has not only proven himself to be a genius of virtually every science native to Earth, he has shown himself to be more knowledgeable than even some of the most highly advanced alien civilizations in the known universe as well. He is often stated to be the smartest man on Earth. Hypnotism.
Intelligence, 6 out of 7.
So 6 out of 7. He is also trained in hypnotism. I love that. I love that when they do these powers, they'll say like he's the smartest man. He knows everything. Also, he did hypnotism in one comic in the 80s, and we consider it to be canon. Weaknesses. This is something I actually didn't know. Fantastic Four power synergism. The original members of the Fantastic Four are tethered to one another and act as their own conduits of power. They can be apart and within their own universe and retain a connection, but prolonged periods cut off from one another in other universes results in a gradual decline in power levels.
What?
If they spend too much time separated this way, they would eventually become powerless. I did not know that they have to work together.
I had no fucking clue about that one.
And then we have here, paraphernalia is Fantastic Four uniform, like all the Fantastic Four's costumes and the rest of Reed's wardrobe. His suit is made of unstable molecules, which means his suit is attuned to his powers. And I like that about the Fantastic Four, that all the suits they were wearing in space became empowered with the same shit, and then the things like, nah, I wear underwear. Oh my god, this goes on about his suit. We need to learn more about this suit because this goes places. This means that the suit is attuned to his powers, which is why Reed's costume stretches with him. The costume also insulates them from electrical assaults. In addition, the team's uniforms are in essence wearable computers. Their costumes have a complete data processing and telemetry system woven into the material at a molecular level. This forms a network with the entire team, providing a constant real-time uplink of everyone's physical condition as well as their location and current situation. The suit is capable of displaying data and touchpad controls on the gauntlets. Its sensors can track all the team's uniforms, provide a picture of their immediate vicinity. The suit has an intricate scanner system which can detect things around the wearer, from how many people are in the next room to what dimension or planet they are on. Reed can also uplink the bodysuit to any computer by stretching his fingertips to filament size and plugging them into a data port. So Reed Richards can turn into a USB stick.
Of course he can.
I thought it was just a rubber suit.
It's not a rubber suit, Luke, it's his USB suit. Notes. So this is trivia, essentially. Reed allegedly won 4 Nobel Prizes, one of which was for the discovery of the negative zone. Despite the clear and obvious use of magic in the Marvel Universe, Reed admits having a poor understanding of magic, often calling it a form of dimensional science he doesn't understand yet. The powers of the Fantastic Four are based on the 4 elements. Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Reed has failed his driving test 4 times. He's the smartest man in the universe, and he can't fucking drive. Oh, that's great. God, I love comic books.